Hi friends, Krista here. Thanks for stopping by Books and Jams. Today I'm going to be telling you about the books that I read in the month of July. July felt like a slower reading month to me. I had a lot of traveling to do. I missed the whole first week because I was in Nicaragua, and then I had other travels later in the month, and I just feel like I didn't get quite as much reading done. But I still have 11 books to talk to you about, and that is definitely not too shabby at all. So let's just jump right into it. First off, as usual, I'm going to start with my Patreon pick for the month of July. And for that, I read Follow the Rabbitproof Fence by Nugi Garamara and Doris Pilkington. This is a nonfiction kind of biography history. So this is a First Nations classic from Australia. And the story is that these three girls were taken from their home. These three Aboriginal girls, actually, they're labeled by the Aboriginal people as half-caste back in the time that this was written in the 1930s. Because they were half-caste, they're a little bit lighter skin, and they were taken to a boarding school, training school really, and forcibly removed from their families. But while they're in horrible conditions, these three girls decided to run away and escape and follow this fence that runs through Western Australia all the way back to their homes. And there is a map in here, and there literally is a fence in Australia that runs the whole from north to south across Western Australia, hoping to keep out rabbits. So the girls follow this fence home. This is a very short little book, and the first half of this really is historical, and it talks about how Western Australia became colonized to begin with, and a little bit about the native groups, indigenous people who lived there before white people started showing up. So there were pirates, and then ultimately the British came and started just taking over land. So we do have about 3 or 4 chapters. The first maybe third of this book is straight history about Western Australia. And then we get into a particular Aboriginal tribe, people group, and their families, and then these three girls, and then how they get taken to the south, their travel to the south on a ship, and then their eventual journey back home. I really thought that this was interesting. I did appreciate learning so much about Western Australia and Australian history. I'm just not familiar with it. There were a lot of names and words that were just very unfamiliar to me. So it did take me a minute to kind of get adjusted to it and to get into it a little bit. I also, once we got into the girl's story, I was definitely more invested, but I just wanted more. I wanted a novelization of it. I wanted more about their character, more about their journey, more about how did they survive barefoot traveling some miles. They were aged 8, 11, and 14, and they walked 1,600 kilometers, which is about 1,000 miles, which is insane to do that. And I just wanted more about that story, and I just didn't get it in this short little book. So I do think it's important. I did think it was a great read. I gave it 4 stars, but I just wanted a little more. And I was very thankful at the end for this glossary of words, because the girls themselves used a lot of Mardujara, I don't know how to say that, words that as they spoke with each other and talked about their families. So I was glad to have that glossary, and I referred to that and the map quite a bit. Very glad that I read this. This was gifted to me by my Australian friend Lee, and I'm so thankful that I finally read it because I do think it was a great read. In the month of July, I did not play my flip and roll game. Instead, I chose quite a few books from my Patreon recommendations jar, and now I can't remember which ones I picked because I picked so many. I think I have 5 books that I ended up reading that were patron recommendations. I'll start with this one. Since I don't have the actual book with me, I'm not sure where it is. I think it's in my trunk, to be honest. I think I lost it in my travels, but I have the cover. I buddy read this with 2 of my patrons, Michelle from Michelle Lynn Reed's channel and Lori from Books, Ink, and Paper channel. They both have channels. I really enjoyed reading this with them. This story by Janice Hallett is told in mixed media. So we read WhatsApp messages, emails back and forth, text messages, completely. There's no straight prose in here. It's all other files, and it is a mystery. And in this book, we follow 2 reporters, really one reporter who is going to be, or journalist, who's going to be writing about this mysterious case of the Alberton Angels, The Alberton Angels were this cult where they believe that there was actual angels on Earth. 18 years prior to the events of this, there was a mass killing or suicide. Like 5 or 6 people died in a strange way, but 2 teenagers and a baby kind of escaped. And so the journalist is now attempting to find and track down that baby, who is now 18 years old, and writing about the kind of bringing this case to the forefront again. Turns out she has a rival journalist who's also writing about the case, and these two have a past, and it's not super friendly. But then they do decide to kind of work together for a little while. I really enjoyed the way that this was set up. I enjoyed the format so much. I thought it was so clever and appealing to read. However, I often was just really lost in the sauce. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. What clues am I supposed to be picking up on? I'm not very good at solving mysteries as I read them, but I did really enjoy this. I kind of enjoyed the cult, almost religious aspect of of those who died, and the cult aspect of it, and thinking about angels on Earth, and it was weird. It was weird. But there were some twists and turns that were pretty fun as things started to get revealed at the end. I gave this 4 stars, and I'm definitely interested in reading more from Janice Hallett and hoping that next time I'm not quite as confused. I don't know. We'll see. Another Patreon recommendation that I read was The Extraordinary Life of Sam Hell by Robert Dugoni. I ended up giving this 5 stars. This is one that I listened to on my drive down to North Carolina, and I listened to it the whole way. It was perfect. Even during stops, I was listening to it. I got there to where I was staying and I had about 10 minutes left. So I drove right past the house, pulled up to a little parking area overlooking a lake. It was so beautiful, and finished this book because I didn't want to stop. And I knew once I saw my cousins, I wasn't going to keep reading. So in this book, we follow Sam Hill, a young boy who is born with red eyes. And we just ultimately follow him through his life and how having red eyes really impacted him. I absolutely loved his family, his mother and father in particular, and how strongly they supported him. He had to deal with a lot of bullying, a lot of prejudice, a lot of tough situations, and also even within himself, coming to accept himself. I thought the story was powerful. It was a little slow moving at times, but I was invested in the character development. It's definitely character based, not plot based. But I was invested in it all the way through, and I gave it 5 stars. I thought the writing was beautiful. The story was a poignant tale, and I really enjoyed listening to that one. Another patron recommendation that I listened to was The Berry Pickers by Amanda Peters. This one is also one that was a little bit more heavy than maybe I normally listen to on my drives. In this one, we follow a family of Indigenous berry pickers in Maine. They live in Canada, but they come down to Maine to pick berries every summer, and they've experienced some tragedies along the way. One summer, their youngest daughter is kidnapped. She's out kind of sitting by a rock in the fields near where they're working, and a woman comes by and takes the daughter. And we end up following the daughter and her life and what happened to her, as well as the family and what happens to them. So this has dual perspectives. It was heavy and it was sad. The family experiences some other tragedies in Maine as well. Some of them really struggle after what happened to the youngest sister. And then we learn about the sister as well and how she grew up in such a different lifestyle, but also kind of questioning who she is. She doesn't look like her parents. Where does she really come from? And the stories that they told her along the way about her life and her past, and why there's no baby pictures of her, etc., etc. It was beautifully written, and it was an emotional story. I definitely enjoyed my time reading it. It was a 4-star read for me. I thought it was an important story, and I'm glad that it was recommended to me. Another recommendation that I pulled out of the jar was In This Moment by Gabrielle Meyer. This is the second in a Timeless series by her. I read When the Day Comes just recently this summer as well. In This Moment was the sequel to that. So the main character in the first book, we now follow her daughter. The daughter is also a time crosser, which just means that she lives her life in multiple timelines. And in this case, actually 3 timelines until her 21st birthday, when she has to choose which timeline she's going to stay stay in for the rest of her life. So she's 21, but really like 60 because she lives each day, but time kind of stays the same in each timeline. She's not missing out on anything. I really am enjoying this series. It is Christian fiction, so there's some wrestling with faith issues in there as well. I didn't feel like the faith elements were overdone. I thought it was really beautifully done, and it's a historical romance ultimately. Who is she going to decide? This one was almost like a love burst because she had 3 different men, one from each timeline. She had to kind of come to grips. Am I going to decide where to stay based on these relationships, or like she really wanted God to reveal to her where she was supposed to be, which is a struggle we kind of always deal with. Like, where should I be, God? What's your will in this situation? And she didn't want to base that on emotions or on relationships. She wanted it to truly be what God wanted. So I definitely really enjoyed In This Moment. That was a really good read. And then the last Patreon pick, I think, was probably my favorite of the bunch. And it's a middle grade book called Lasagna Means I Love You by Kate O'Shaughnessy. Guys, this book is beautiful. It is such a delight. We follow a young girl named Mo, who at the very beginning of the book, her nan passes away or has just passed away, and her uncle doesn't really want to take responsibility for her, so Mo gets put into foster care. But she is really thinking about the advice and the time that she had with her nan, and one of the things her nan encouraged her was to find a hobby. So in foster care, Mo is just very curious, as you can expect, about her past and about her family. She doesn't know anyone else in her family except her uncle, who is now overseas in the army, and then her grandma who passed away. I forget how it starts, but she begins finding family recipes and learning how to cook. I think she found a family cookbook at the social services one of the times that she was there. She kind of sneaks it home, and she loves the stories that go along with these family recipes. This turns into a big project for Mo, and she starts to collect family recipes from the people that she meets out in the street and the parks. In all of this, Mo is hoping to find out information about her biological family. It's a beautiful look at foster care and grief, and just this little girl learning who she is and who she wants to be, and learning a new hobby of cooking. I thought that this was a beautiful story. I gave it 5 stars. It's a favorite middle grade for me this year. I absolutely loved Lasagna Means I Love You and would highly, highly recommend it. I did read one book on my Kindle this month. Go me. I started it while I was away in Nicaragua. I only brought my Kindle with me, and I read A Novel Love Story by Ashley Poston, and unfortunately this was quite a bit of a miss for me. It is one of my books that I had on NetGalley. Still need to write my review because I have a tendency to read books and not write my reviews, but I thought the premise of this was so fun. We follow our main character who is traveling and ends up in the town that's the setting of her favorite book series, romance book series. So her car breaks down, she ends up in this town, and she knows all of the people in the town, but they're all kind of stagnant because the author of these books has passed away and there's no closure to this series. So it feels like all of the people in this town are kind of in limbo. And she decides she's going to try to help bring some closure to these characters, people. And I thought that sounded like such a fun premise. And the only person that doesn't fit into the stories is the bookshop owner, who's never really mentioned in the books. So she's trying to figure out who he is and what's going on in this town. Why is it in limbo? What can she do to help these favorite characters of hers? It's a series that she absolutely loves. And while waiting for her car to get fixed, she tries to take matters into her own hands. I found the romantic chemistry lacking between the two people who are supposed to be a romantic couple. I loved the idea, but I didn't feel like it was walked out really well. There were some really clunky conversations here and there. Like the dialogue and banter was really lacking in my opinion. I felt, zero chemistry, like I said, between the two love interests, and it just it just was a bummer. I just really didn't like the writing. I thought it overly cheesy at times. I rolled my eyes a couple times, which is never what you want. I want to feel all the feels, the little butterflies, the tension building up, and I felt nothing during this book. So that was a real bummer. But one that I did really enjoy that was kind of in the same vein as that one is Authentically Izzy by Pepper Basham. This is a Christian fiction romantic comedy that I really did enjoy. I've been wanting to start this series. Loyally Luke, I believe, is the third one, and that's the one that I have on NetGalley. So I wanted to start at the beginning of the companion series. So I did listen to Authentically Izzy. Plus, I was listening to some heavier stuff with the Berry Pickers and Sam Hell, and I needed a lighter listen. So I did listen to this on my travels, and it definitely fit the bill for something lighter and a bit more fun. In this book, we follow Izzy, who is not exactly content in her workplace. She really would love to work in a bookstore, to run a bookstore, own a bookstore someday, but she has had some blows that kind of knock her confidence down a bit. And so her well-meaning, pregnant, married cousin signs her up for an online dating service, trying to just kind of get her out of her shell, help her to meet some new people. And it works. She meets this man who seems to be absolutely perfect, only he lives real far away. He lives in one of those islands off the coast of Scotland that's like almost all the way up to Norway, like way up, way off the up in the middle of nowhere, and that's where he lives. But they connect so well. What's going to happen? What are they going to decide? She lives in North Carolina by the Blue Ridge Mountains, has a strong accent that I wasn't thrilled with the narration of this, but it fit. She had a very strong twang, a Southern accent. And it was just really cute, very sweet. Another situation where seeking God's will and what should we do with the situation was a big part of the story, but not overly spiritualized, I guess. It felt very natural and legitimate questions that they would be asking of God. I really enjoyed this one. Perfect antidote for some of those heavier reads. I did pick up one of my 5-star predictions, so I'm not going to tell you too much about this one, but let's just say that I did read The Paris Orphan by Natasha Lester. I picked it up because it was the longest of the three and I wanted to make sure to make progress. I enjoyed this, but I'm not going to tell you any details about why or what until that video at the end of August. And then I also read 2 cozy mysteries. I'll just tell you what they are. I'm going to be hopefully doing a cozy mystery vlog at some point. And so these will be included in there, but I read some favorites of other booktubers that I know. And so I read Live and Let Chai by Bree Baker. This one was already on my shelves. This takes place in a seaside town where our main character / amateur sleuth runs an iced tea shop. Someone is murdered and she is looking like a suspect. So she's determined to try to figure out what happens. Enjoyed that one, as well as Crime and Poetry by Amanda Flower, another favorite of some of my booktube people that I watch. This one has a bit of a magical element to it, but it does also take place in a bookstore, which is the best kind of a setting, I think, for a cozy. So find out more about these at some point in the future when I do a cozy mystery vlog. And that is it, I think. I think I covered everything that I read in the month of July. It ended up being a really good reading month. I would definitely say Lasagna Means I Love You was my favorite read of the month. So good. I would love to hear from you. What were some of your favorite reads in the month of July? Thank you so much for hanging out with me today and listening to what I've been reading. I would love to know if any of these are making it onto your TBR now, or if you've already read them, did you feel the same way as me or differently? Let's chat books in the comments. I love talking with you down there. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to talking with you in another video very soon. Bye.